The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Finn Lancaster pulled his horse to a stop outside the Silver Ridge Saloon, and he knew in his gut that something had gone terribly wrong in Superior, Arizona. It was the spring of 1883, and the mining town had been on edge for weeks, ever since Marcus Donnelly and his crew had taken control of the old Redemption mine up in the hills. Finn had ridden into town that morning with nothing more than the intention of collecting supplies and heading back to his ranch in the valley. But the frantic look on old Timothy's face as he stumbled out of the general store changed everything. "They took her, Finn," Timothy gasped, clutching at his chest as though his heart might give out right there on the dusty street. "They took Miss Marlowe right out of the schoolhouse, rode up there bold as brass and dragged her away." Finn felt his blood turn to ice. Marlowe Zimmerman had arrived in Superior 6 months earlier to teach at the small schoolhouse on the edge of town. She was 22 years old, fresh from Denver with ideas about education and progress that had initially raised eyebrows among the more conservative townsfolk. But her genuine warmth and dedication to the children had won over nearly everyone, including Finn, though he had been too shy to do much more than tip his hat to her on the rare occasions their paths crossed. He had admired her from a distance, noting the way her dark hair caught the sunlight and how her green eyes sparkled when she laughed with the children during recess. "Where did they take her?" Finn demanded, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. "The mine," Timothy wheezed. "Donnelly said something about needing leverage. There has been talk about the territorial marshal coming to investigate their claim. I guess they figure holding a schoolteacher hostage might keep the law at bay." Finn did not wait to hear more. He swung back onto his horse, a sturdy chestnut mare named Copper, and spurred her toward the northern trail that led up into the Pinal Mountains where the Redemption mine sat like a scar on the landscape. His mind raced as he rode. Donnelly was dangerous, a man who had drifted into Superior with a handful of rough characters, and somehow managed to file a claim on a mine that everyone knew had been abandoned for good reason. There had been whispers of claim jumping and worse, but no one had been willing to stand up to Donnelly and his armed crew until now. The ride took nearly 2 hours, and with every passing minute, Finn's worry grew. What were they doing to Marlowe up there? Was she hurt? Scared? The thought of her in danger made something fierce and protective rise up in his chest, an emotion so powerful it surprised him. He barely knew her, yet the idea of her suffering was unbearable. When the mine finally came into view, Finn slowed Copper to a walk and assessed the situation. The entrance was a dark mouth carved into the mountainside, with rough wooden supports framing it. A few ramshackle buildings clustered nearby, serving as living quarters and storage. 3 men stood guard outside, rifles in hand, looking bored but alert enough to be dangerous. Finn knew he could not just ride and shooting. That would likely get Marlowe killed. But he also knew that men like Donnelly respected only one thing: strength. He needed to project confidence to make them believe that crossing him would cost them more than keeping Marlowe was worth. He straightened in his saddle, adjusted his hat, and rode Copper directly toward the mine entrance at a steady, unhurried pace. The guards spotted him immediately and raised their rifles, but Finn kept coming, his face a mask of determination. "That is far enough," one of the guards called out, a skinny man with a scarred cheek. "This here is private property." "I am here to see Donnelly," Finn said, his voice carrying across the distance between them, "and I am not leaving without the schoolteacher." The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Clearly, they had not expected someone to come alone and demand anything. The scarred man disappeared into one of the buildings while the other 2 kept their weapons trained on Finn. He sat motionless on Copper, his heart pounding but his expression calm. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus Donnelly emerged. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a thick beard and eyes that held no warmth. He looked Finn up and down with obvious amusement. "Well, well," Donnelly drawled, "if it is not Finn Lancaster. I heard you had a ranch down in the valley. What brings you all the way up here?" "You know why I am here," Finn replied evenly. "You have got Marlowe Zimmerman. I want her released immediately." Donnelly laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the rocks. "Is that so? And what makes you think you are in any position to demand anything?" "Because holding a schoolteacher hostage is going to bring down more trouble on you than you can handle," Finn said. "The territorial marshal is already interested in your operation here. You really want to add kidnapping to whatever else he finds when he shows up." "The marshal is exactly why I need insurance," Donnelly shot back. "Miss Zimmerman is going to make sure that Marshall thinks twice before causing problems for me and my men." "That is not going to work the way you think it will," Finn said. "All you are doing is guaranteeing that when the law comes, they will come hard. But if you let her go now, you might still have a chance to sort out your claim issues without ending up in front of a judge." Donnelly's eyes narrowed. "You rode all the way up here by yourself to tell me that. You must be sweet on the girl." Finn felt heat rise in his face but kept his voice steady. "I came because what you are doing is wrong, and because Superior is not going to stand for it. You let her go, and maybe we can all walk away from this without bloodshed." For a long moment, Donnelly studied him. Then he spat in the dust. "I will tell you what, Lancaster, you seem like a reasonable man. Why don't you come inside and we can discuss this properly? No guns, no trouble. Just a conversation." Every instinct told Finn this was a trap, but he also knew he was not going to get anywhere standing outside. If Marlowe was in there, he needed to see her to know she was all right. He dismounted slowly, unbuckled his gun belt, and handed it to the nearest guard. "Lead the way," he said. Donnelly grinned and turned toward the mine entrance. Finn followed, his senses on high alert. They passed through the wooden framework and into the darkness of the tunnel. Oil lamps hung at intervals, casting flickering shadows on the rough-hewn walls. The air was cool and damp, and Finn could hear water dripping somewhere deeper in the mine. They walked for several minutes, descending deeper into the earth. Finn noted every turn, every landmark, knowing he might need to find his way out quickly. Finally, they emerged into a larger chamber that had been converted into a makeshift living space. Crates served as furniture, and more lamps provided light. And there, sitting on a wooden chair with her hands bound in front of her, was Marlowe. Relief flooded through Finn at the sight of her. She looked frightened and disheveled, her dress torn at the sleeve and dirt smudged across her cheek, but she appeared unharmed. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and he saw hope flare in them. "Marlowe," he said, taking a step toward her, but one of Donnelly's men moved to block him. "She is fine, as you can see," Donnelly said, "and she will stay fine as long as everyone cooperates." "You cannot keep her here," Finn said, his anger rising. "This is madness. This is survival," Donnelly snapped. "I've got $20,000 invested in this mine, and I am not about to lose it because some bureaucrat in Tucson decides my claim paperwork is not in order. Miss Zimmerman is my guarantee that things go smoothly." Finn looked at Marlowe, saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else, determination. She had not given up. She was waiting for an opportunity just as he was. "What if I could help you?" Finn said suddenly, the idea forming even as he spoke. "What if there was another way to resolve your claim issue without involving her?" Donnelly raised an eyebrow. "I am listening." "I know the territorial marshal," Finn said, which was true, though he and Marshal Garrett were hardly close friends. "I could ride to Tucson, Talk to him directly, explain the situation. Maybe there is paperwork missing, or maybe there has been a misunderstanding. If I can get him to review your claim fairly, will you let Marlowe go?" "And why would I trust you to do that?" Donnelly asked. "Because I am giving you my word," Finn replied. "And because the alternative is that this ends badly for everyone. You are outnumbered in the long run, Donnelly. The whole town knows what you have done. Every hour you keep her here makes it worse." Donnelly stroked his beard, considering. Finn held his breath. Then Donnelly shook his head. "No deal. I am keeping the girl until I know for sure the marshal is not going to cause trouble, but I will tell you what, you can stay here too. That way, if anything happens to me, the town knows they will lose both of you." Finn's heart sank, but before he could respond, Marlowe spoke for the first time. "No." Her voice was clear and strong despite her circumstances. "Finn, do not let him keep you here too. Go get help." "I am not leaving without you," Finn said, meeting her eyes. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond the immediate situation. Donnelly laughed. "Well, is not that touching? Fine, Lancaster, you want to play hero? You can keep the lady company. Maybe she will be less trouble with you here." Before Finn could protest, two of Donnelly's men grabbed him and forced him down into a chair next to Marlowe. They bound his hands as well, using rough rope that bit into his wrists. Donnelly gave orders for extra guards to be posted, then left the chamber with most of his men, leaving just two to watch the prisoners. As soon as they were relatively alone, Marlowe leaned close to Finn and whispered, "You should not have come." "I had to," he whispered back. "Are you all right?" "Did they hurt you?" "I am fine. Scared, but fine." She paused, studying his face in the lamplight. "I did not think anyone would come." "The whole town is worried about you," Finn said. "Timothy told me what happened. I could not stand the thought of you up here alone." Something shifted in her expression, a softness replacing some of the fear. "I have seen you around town. You have got that ranch in the valley, right? With the cattle." "And some horses," Finn confirmed. "It is not much, but it is mine. I have been building it up for the past 5 years." "I have noticed you at church sometimes," Marlowe admitted quietly. "You always sit in the back and leave as soon as the service ends." "I am not much for socializing," Finn said. "Never have been good with words." "You seem to be doing fine now," Marlowe said, and there was the ghost of a smile on her lips despite their dire situation. Finn felt warmth spread through his chest. Even here, in the worst possible circumstances, talking to Marlowe felt right. He found himself wishing he had been braver months ago, that he had introduced himself properly instead of just tipping his hat from a distance. "We are going to get out of this," he said firmly. "I promise you." "How?" Marlowe asked, glancing at the guards who stood near the chamber entrance, their backs mostly turned but still alert. "They have got guns and we are tied up." "I am working on that part," Finn admitted, "but I meant what I said to Donnelly. The town knows where we are. Help will come." "What if it does not come in time?" Marlowe's voice trembled slightly. "What if the marshal shows up and Donnelly panics? What if he decides we are more trouble than we are worth?" Finn wished he could reach out and take her hand, offer some physical comfort. Instead, he leaned closer, keeping his voice low and steady. "Then we will figure something out together. You and me. I did not ride all the way up here to let anything happen to you, Marlowe." She looked at him for a long moment and he saw tears glisten in her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "You barely know me." Finn took a breath, and in that moment, with everything uncertain and dangerous, he found the courage to speak the truth. "Because from the first day I saw you in town, walking to the schoolhouse with your books under your arm and that determined look on your face, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. Because you are kind and brave, and you care about those children more than anything." Because when I heard you were in danger, it felt like my own heart was in danger. Marlowe's eyes widened, and a tear spilled down her cheek. Finn, I know this is not the right time or place, he continued quickly. And I know I should have said something sooner, should have introduced myself properly, should have done 100 things differently. But right now, all I know is that I am going to do everything in my power to get you home safe. I have noticed you too, Marlowe whispered. At church, around town. I thought you seemed kind, gentle, different from the other men who would try to catch my attention with loud voices and bold gestures. I kept hoping you would say hello, but you never did. I was afraid, Finn admitted. Afraid you would think a rancher with dirt under his fingernails was not good enough for an educated woman from Denver. That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard, Marlowe said, and now she was almost smiling through her tears. Do you know how lonely it has been here? Everyone has been kind, but I have felt so out of place, so far from home, and the only person who ever made me feel. She trailed off, shaking her head. Now is not the time for this either. Maybe it is exactly the time, Finn said. Maybe when everything is uncertain, that is when you say the things that matter. Before Marlowe could respond, one of the guards turned and barked at them to be quiet. They fell silent, but the air between them had changed. Something had been acknowledged, a connection formed that gave them both strength. Hours passed. The guards changed shifts. Donnelly returned periodically to check on them, always with a smug expression that made Finn want to punch him. Night fell, though it was hard to tell in the depths of the mine except for the growing chill in the air. Finn worked quietly at the ropes binding his wrists, trying to loosen them without attracting attention, but whoever had tied them knew their business. It was near midnight when they heard shouting from somewhere above, followed by the sound of gunfire. The guards in the chamber tensed, their weapons coming up. Donnelly burst in, his face red with anger. The marshal showed up early, he snarled, with a whole posse. Someone must have ridden to Tucson and told them what was happening. Finn felt a surge of hope. Help had come after all, but Donnelly was clearly panicking, and a panicked man with a gun was the most dangerous kind. This is your fault, Donnelly said, pointing at Finn. You led them here somehow. I've been tied up in your mine all day, Finn said evenly. How could I have led anyone anywhere? More gunfire echoed from above, closer now. Donnelly pulled out his pistol and aimed it at Marlowe. They will back off if they know I will shoot her. Don't be a fool, Finn said urgently. That will only make things worse. You hurt her and there will be no mercy for you. Let us go now while you still have a chance to negotiate. Shut up, Donnelly shouted. He grabbed Marlowe by the arm and hauled her to her feet. She cried out, and Finn lunged forward instinctively despite his bonds. One of the guards hit him hard across the face with the butt of a rifle, and stars exploded across his vision. When his head cleared, Donnelly was dragging Marlowe toward a side tunnel, one of the deeper shafts that led into the more dangerous parts of the mine. Finn struggled to his feet, ignoring the blood running down his face from a split lip. Where are you taking her? He demanded. Insurance, Donnelly said. If the marshal wants her back, he will have to meet my terms. He disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel with Marlowe, leaving his men to guard Finn. But the guards were nervous now, their attention divided between their prisoner and the sounds of the approaching lawmen. Finn saw his opportunity. He launched himself at the nearest guard, hitting him hard with his shoulder despite his bound hands. They went down together, and Finn managed to grab the man's knife from his belt. The second guard raised his rifle, but before he could fire, shots rang out from the main tunnel and he went down. Marshal Garrett appeared with 3 deputies, their guns drawn. Lancaster, that you? Donnelly took the schoolteacher deeper into the mine, Finn gasped, sawing at his bonds with the stolen knife. The northwest tunnel. He has got a gun on her. How long ago? Just now. Maybe 2 minutes, the marshal cursed. Half these old tunnels are not stable. He goes too deep, the whole thing could collapse. Finn finally got his hands free and grabbed the fallen guard's rifle. Then we better move fast. You are not a lawman, Garrett said. That is my. Finn paused, then said firmly, that is the woman I love down there. I am going. The marshal looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Fine. But stay behind me and do what I say. They moved quickly but carefully into the northwest tunnel, their lamps casting long shadows on the walls. Finn could hear his heart pounding in his ears. The tunnel sloped downward and the air grew colder and damper. They passed old support beams that looked half-rotted, and Finn understood the marshal's concern. This part of the mine was clearly unstable. After several minutes, they heard voices ahead. Donnelly was shouting something, and Marlowe was responding, her voice steady despite what she must have been feeling. Finn felt pride surge through him at her courage. They rounded a corner and saw them. Donnelly had Marlowe backed against the tunnel wall, his gun pointed at her chest. His face was wild in the lamplight, the face of a man who knew he had lost but was not ready to accept it. That is far enough, Marshal, Donnelly called out. One more step and I shoot her. Easy now, Donnelly, Garrett said, his voice calm and professional. There is no way out of this for you. But it does not have to end with anyone else getting hurt. Let Miss Zimmerman go and we can talk about how to resolve this. Resolve this, Donnelly laughed bitterly. I am going to hang. We both know it. Not if you let her go, the marshal said. Kidnapping is serious, but nobody has been killed. A judge might show mercy if you cooperate now. While Garrett talked, Finn was assessing the situation. He caught Marlowe's eye and saw that she understood what he was thinking. If he could get a clear shot or if she could move at the right moment. But before any plan could form, there was a deep, ominous cracking sound from above. Dust and small rocks began to fall from the ceiling. The tunnel was giving way. Everyone out, the marshal shouted. Now. Donnelly looked up, his attention diverted for just a second. That was all Marlowe needed. She threw herself sideways, away from his gun. Finn was already moving, covering the distance between them in 3 long strides. He hit Donnelly hard, driving him away from Marlowe. The gun went off, the shot deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wild. The ceiling groaned. More rocks fell, larger ones now. The marshal grabbed Marlowe and started pulling her back toward the main tunnel. Finn grappled with Donnelly, trying to subdue him, but the older man was strong and desperate. They rolled across the tunnel floor as timber supports began to splinter above them. Finn, Marlowe screamed. Get out of there. He wanted to, but Donnelly had him in a bear hug, and they were locked together. Then one of the deputies was there, pulling Donnelly off with the help of another deputy. Finn scrambled to his feet and ran, the tunnel collapsing behind him. He felt a beam fall across his shoulders, but it was glancing, and he kept moving. Behind him, he heard Donnelly scream, but there was no time to go back. Finn burst into the main tunnel just as the northwest shaft came down with a roar of falling rock and dust. The deputies who had helped him made it out too, coughing and covered in dust. But Donnelly was gone, buried under tons of rock and earth. Marlowe was there immediately, her bound hands still in front of her but her eyes full of relief and worry. Are you hurt? I am fine, Finn said, though his shoulder throbbed where the beam had hit him. Are you? I am all right now, she said, and then she was crying, the terror and stress of the day finally overwhelming her. Finn pulled her into his arms, awkward because of their positions but necessary. He held her while she sobbed against his chest, murmuring reassurances. The marshal cut the ropes from Marlowe's wrists and then checked on Finn's shoulder. It was bruised but not broken, nothing that would not heal. Donnelly's remaining men had all been captured or fled, the marshal reported. It was over. They made their way slowly back up through the mine and out into the cool night air. Finn had never been so grateful to see stars. The posse had horses for them, and the marshal insisted they ride back to Superior immediately so the town doctor could check them both over. "How did you know to come?" Finn asked as they rode down the mountain trail. "Timothy rode like the devil to Tucson," Garrett explained. "Got there just as I was preparing to head up here anyway based on some complaints about Donnelly's operation. When he told me about the kidnapping, I gathered every man I could and we rode straight through. Good thing we did." Finn nodded, making a mental note to thank Timothy properly. The old man had probably saved both their lives. They reached Superior near dawn. The whole town seemed to be awake and waiting. When people saw Marlowe safe on horseback, a cheer went up. Parents of her students rushed forward, and the children who had stayed up crying for their teacher were brought out to see that she was all right. The doctor checked them both over. Marlowe had bruises and rope burns, but nothing serious. Finn's shoulder would be sore for a while, but as he had suspected, nothing was broken. The doctor gave them both something for the pain and ordered rest, but Finn could not rest, not yet. As the sun rose over Superior, painting the desert sky in shades of pink and gold, he walked Marlowe to the small house she rented behind the schoolhouse. They had barely spoken during the commotion in town, but now, alone on her doorstep, they had no more excuses. "Thank you," Marlowe said softly. "For coming for me, for risking your life." "I told you why I came," Finn said. "I meant every word I said in that mine." "So did I," Marlowe replied. She looked up at him, her green eyes bright in the morning light despite her exhaustion. "Finn, I do not know what happens now. I do not know the rules for this. We barely know each other, and yet after yesterday, I feel like I know you better than anyone." "I feel the same way," Finn admitted, "and I do not know the rules either, but I know that I do not want to go back to just tipping my hat to you from a distance. I want to really know you. I want to court you properly if you will let me." Marlowe smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "I would like that very much, though after everything we have been through, maybe we can skip some of the formality." Finn laughed, then winced as the movement hurt his shoulder. "Maybe we can. How about dinner tomorrow? I will cook. Nothing fancy, but I can promise it will be edible." "That sounds perfect," Marlowe said. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Get some rest, Finn Lancaster. I will see you tomorrow." He touched the spot where she had kissed him, a foolish grin spreading across his face. "Tomorrow," he agreed. The next few weeks were the happiest of Finn's life. True to his word, he courted Marlowe properly, though as she had suggested, they moved faster than convention might normally allow. They had dinner together, and he discovered she had a quick wit and a love of books that matched his own secret passion for reading. She came to his ranch and helped him with the horses, laughing when one of the foals nibbled on her hair. He attended a school recital and watched with pride as she conducted her students through a program of songs and poems. The town watched their courtship with approval. There was something romantic about the story of the cowboy who had ridden to the mine to rescue the schoolteacher, and people liked to see them together, liked to think that something good had come from that terrible day. 3 months after the incident at the mine, on a warm evening in August, Finn took Marlowe riding up into the hills above his ranch. They stopped at a spot where you could see for miles. The valley spread out below them like a patchwork quilt of greens and golds. "This is beautiful," Marlowe said, dismounting and walking to the edge of the overlook. "I come up here sometimes when I need to think," Finn said, joining her. It helps put things in perspective. What are you thinking about now? Marlowe asked. About how 3 months ago I was too scared to even say hello to you, Finn said. And how grateful I am that I got a second chance, even if it came in the worst possible way. Marlowe took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I am grateful too. Not for what happened, but for what came after. Finn turned to face her, his heart pounding. He had practiced this speech 100 times, but now, with her standing before him with the sunset lighting her hair, all the fancy words fled his mind. Marlowe, he said simply, I love you. I think I have loved you since the first moment I saw you, and I know I will love you for the rest of my life. I know we have not been courting long by usual standards, but after what we have been through, waiting feels foolish. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to Marlowe's eyes, but she was smiling. Yes, she said. Yes, Finn, I will marry you. I love you too. He kissed her then properly for the first time. It was everything he had imagined and more, sweet and perfect and full of promise. They were married in September, in the small church in Superior, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Marlowe wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself with help from some of the local women. Finn wore his best suit and could not stop grinning. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard all the way to Tucson. They moved into Finn's ranch house, which Marlowe immediately set about making into a proper home. She continued teaching at the schoolhouse, riding in each morning and returning each evening to help Finn with the ranch work. They fell into an easy partnership, working side by side during the day and falling asleep in each other's arms each night. The first winter of their marriage was harsh, with storms that isolated them for days at a time. But Finn did not mind. Those long evenings snowed in with Marlowe, reading by the fire or playing cards or just talking, were some of the best of his life. They learned each other's rhythms and quirks, the way married couples do, and found that they fit together even better than they had hoped. In the spring, Marlowe discovered she was pregnant. Finn was overjoyed and immediately became comically overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any work at all. Marlowe laughed at him and continued teaching until the school year ended in May, then reluctantly agreed to take the summer and fall to prepare for the baby. Their son was born in November of 1884, a healthy boy with Marlowe's green eyes and Finn's dark hair. They named him Samuel, after Finn's father who had passed away years before. Finn held his son for the first time and felt tears streaming down his face. He looked at Marlowe, exhausted but radiant in the bed, and felt such overwhelming love and gratitude that he could hardly speak. We made this, he said wonderingly. You and me. We did, Marlowe agreed, smiling, and he is perfect. Samuel was indeed perfect, at least in his parents' eyes. He was a good baby, sleeping through the night fairly early and happy to be passed around to whoever wanted to hold him. The children from the school came to visit, wide-eyed at their teacher's baby, and Marlowe let them gently touch his tiny hands. When Samuel was 6 months old, Marlowe started talking about returning to teaching. She missed it, missed the children and the challenge of it. Finn understood, and they worked out an arrangement where Marlowe would teach 3 days a week and spend the other days at home with Samuel. It worked well for their family. The years passed in a blur of happiness. The ranch prospered as Finn's reputation for raising quality horses spread. Samuel grew into a curious, energetic little boy who loved following his father around and helping with the horses. When he was 3, Marlowe became pregnant again, and this time they had a daughter they named Grace. 2 years after that, another son arrived whom they named Daniel. Finn's house was always full of noise and laughter now, so different from the quiet, lonely life he had lived before Marlowe. He would sometimes stop in the middle of the day, watching his wife help one of their children with a task or hearing them all laughing together, and marvel at how his life had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Marlowe asked one evening as they sat on the porch after putting the children to bed. It was 1890, and they had been married for 6 years. "About that day at the mine," Finn admitted. "About how terrified I was that I would lose you before I ever really had you." "I think about it sometimes too," Marlowe said, leaning against his shoulder. "It was the worst and best day of my life in some ways. Worst because of the fear and danger, but best because it was when I realized you loved me." "I do love you," Finn said, kissing the top of her head. "More every day." "I love you too," Marlowe replied. "Thank you for riding to that mine. Thank you for being brave enough to demand my release when you had no leverage and no plan." "I had to," Finn said simply. "I could not imagine a world without you in it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over the valley. From inside the house, they heard one of the children call out from a nightmare, and Marlowe rose to go comfort them. Finn watched her go, still marveling after all these years at his good fortune. Life continued to be good to the Lancaster family. Samuel grew into a responsible young man who had his father's way with horses. Grace had her mother's love of learning and became a voracious reader. Daniel was the charmer of the family, able to talk his way into or out of almost anything. Finn and Marlowe added one more child to their brood in 1893, another daughter named Hope. As the children grew, Finn and Marlowe grew together too. They had their disagreements, of course, the way all couples do, but they always worked through them. The foundation of love and respect they had built from those first terrifying hours in the mine together was unshakable. Marlowe eventually stopped teaching at the school when the demands of raising 4 children became too much to balance with classroom duties. But she tutored students at home and never lost her passion for education. She made sure all their children could read and write well, and instilled in them a love of learning that served them throughout their lives. Finn's ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. He was known as a fair man to do business with and someone who kept his word. People would sometimes ask him about that day at the redemption mine, and he would always say the same thing. It was the day his real life began. In 1899, Samuel, now 17, started courting a girl from Superior named Emma. Finn watched his son navigate the uncertainties of young love and remembered his own awkward days of admiring Marlowe from a distance. He gave Samuel advice when asked, but mostly let him figure things out on his own. "He reminds me of you," Marlowe said one evening as they watched Samuel ride off to call on Emma. "Heaven help him then," Finn said with a laugh. "I was a mess." "You were sweet," Marlowe corrected. "Shy but sweet, and brave when it mattered most." "I had good motivation," Finn said, pulling her close. They were in their 40s now, with gray starting to thread through their hair and lines on their faces from years of squinting into the desert sun. But to Finn, Marlowe was as beautiful as she had been that first day he saw her walking to the schoolhouse with her books under her arm. As the new century dawned in 1900, the Lancaster family gathered on their porch to watch the sun rise on January 1st. It was a cold morning and they were bundled in blankets, but Finn had insisted on marking the occasion. Samuel was there with Emma, now his fiancée. Grace was 14 and already talking about going to university in California. Daniel was 12 and full of mischief. Hope was 7 and cuddled between her parents. "What do you think the new century will bring?" Grace asked. "Change," Marlowe said. "The world is changing faster than it ever has. There will be new inventions, new ideas, new challenges." "But some things will stay the same," Finn added, looking at his family gathered around him. "Love," Family, the important things. That's right, Marlowe agreed, meeting his eyes with a smile that still made his heart skip a beat after all these years. The children started talking excitedly about the future, about what they might do and see in this new century. Finn listened, content. He thought back to that desperate ride up to the mine 17 years earlier, remembered the fear and determination that had driven him. He had not known then what would come of that day, had not dared to dream that it would lead to this. A life full of love and purpose, a family that was his pride and joy, a wife who was his partner in every way. What are you thinking about? Marlowe whispered, somehow knowing even after all these years when his mind was wandering. Just that I am grateful, Finn said quietly, for all of it. For that day at the mine, as terrible as it was, for the courage to ride up there, for you saying yes when I asked you to marry me. For these children and this life we have built together. I am grateful too, Marlowe said, resting her head on his shoulder as the sun continued to rise, painting the sky in brilliant colors. For the cowboy who came to rescue me and ended up capturing my heart instead. Finn kissed her temple, holding her close as their children chattered around them, and the sun rose on a new century. He had ridden to that mine all those years ago with no clear plan beyond saving the woman he loved. He had never imagined that his impulsive act of bravery would lead to this rich, full life. But he was grateful for every moment, every challenge overcome, every joy shared. The story of the cowboy and the schoolteacher became a legend in Superior, told and retold over the years. But for Finn and Marlowe, it was not a story. It was simply the beginning of their life together, a life built on love, courage, and the unshakable belief that some things are worth riding into danger for. Years continued to pass, and the Lancaster family remained a cornerstone of the Superior community. Samuel married Emma in 1902, and they settled on a portion of the ranch that Finn deeded to them. Grace did go to university in California, studying literature and eventually becoming a teacher like her mother. Daniel took over more and more of the ranch operations as Finn grew older, showing a real talent for the business side of things. Hope grew into a spirited young woman who had inherited both her father's love of horses and her mother's quick mind. Finn and Marlowe grew old together gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They became grandparents multiple times over, and their house was always full of grandchildren wanting to hear stories or learn to ride or simply be near their grandparents' steady, loving presence. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children threw them a party at the ranch. It seemed like half of Superior showed up, testament to the respect and affection people had for the Lancasters. As Finn danced with Marlowe under the stars, the same stars they had looked up at after that terrifying day at the mine so many years before, he marveled once again at the life they had built. "You ever regret it?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Marrying a simple rancher instead of staying in the city," Marlowe laughed. "You are still asking me that after 25 years. Finn Lancaster, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I have never regretted a single moment. Not even when I tracked mud through the house after telling you I wiped my feet," Finn teased. "Well, maybe that one time," Marlowe said with a smile. Then she grew serious. "Do you regret it, marrying a schoolteacher who made you come to every recital and spelling bee?" "Never," Finn said firmly. "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. A real home, children who make me proud every day, a purpose beyond just surviving. And most of all, you gave me yourself. How could I ever regret that?" They kissed as their children and grandchildren and friends cheered. And Finn felt the same rush of love he had felt that first time he kissed her on the hillside overlooking the valley. As they grew into their 60s and 70s, Finn and Marlowe slowed down but never stopped being active in their family and community. Marlowe tutored children who struggled in school, never charging families who could not afford to pay. Finn mentored young ranchers, sharing the knowledge he had accumulated over a lifetime. They were beloved figures in Superior, symbols of enduring love and partnership. In the spring of 1920, they celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch of the ranch house they had shared for so many years. Their children wanted to throw another party, but Finn and Marlowe preferred the peace of each other's company. 35 years, Marlowe mused, holding Finn's hand as they watched the sunset. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you rode up to that mine, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. It was a lifetime ago, Finn said, a whole lifetime that we have lived together. And I would not change a single day, Marlowe said. Not even the hard days, Finn asked. There had been hard days over the years. The winter when Daniel had gotten so sick, they thought they might lose him. The drought that had nearly bankrupted the ranch. The year Grace's first husband had died, leaving her a young widow. Not even those, Marlowe said firmly. Because we faced them together. That is what matters. We have been a team through everything. Finn raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Always a team, he agreed. They sat together as the stars came out, comfortable in the silence that only couples who have spent a lifetime together can share. Finn thought about the young man he had been, riding frantically up a mountain to save a woman he barely knew but somehow loved. He thought about the courage it had taken to walk into that mine unarmed, to stand up to Donnelly, to risk everything for love. It had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every danger faced, every challenge overcome. It had all been worth it to have this life with Marlowe, to build a family and a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. As if reading his mind, Marlowe said softly, "You know what I am most proud of? Not the ranch or the children's accomplishments or any of that. I am most proud that we loved each other well, that we showed our children what a real partnership looks like, that we made each other better people." "You made me a better person," Finn corrected. "I was just a lonely rancher before you." "And I was just a lost schoolteacher far from home," Marlowe said. "We found each other, Finn. Against all odds, in the worst possible circumstances, we found each other." Finn pulled her close, and they sat together watching the stars wheel overhead. Two people who had loved each other through everything life could throw at them and come out stronger for it. The years rolled on. Finn and Marlowe saw their children become grandparents themselves, making Finn and Marlowe great-grandparents. They watched the world change around them. Automobiles replacing horses on many roads, electricity coming to Superior, the telephone connecting the isolated town to the wider world. But through all the changes, their love remained constant. In 1925, on a warm September day very much like the day they had married 40 years earlier, Finn and Marlowe renewed their wedding vows in the same church where they had first pledged themselves to each other. They were in their 70s now, their hair completely white, their faces lined with age, but their love as strong as ever. The whole family was there, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the pews. As Finn looked into Marlowe's eyes and repeated the vows they had first spoken so many years before, he felt the same joy and certainty he had felt then. This woman was his partner, his love, his home. She always had been, from that moment in the mine when he had confessed his feelings in the face of danger. She always would be. They lived their final years in peace and contentment, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they had served. When Finn passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1932, at the age of 79, Marlowe held his hand and whispered that she would see him soon. True to her word, she followed him just 6 months later, her heart simply stopping one night as she slept in the bed they had shared for so many years. They were buried side by side in the Superior Cemetery, under a headstone that read simply, "Finn and Marlowe Lancaster, together in life, together in eternity." Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren mourned them, but also celebrated the beautiful life they had lived together. The story of their romance became a legend in Superior, passed down through generations. People still talked about the day the cowboy rode to the mine to save the schoolteacher, about the courage it took, and the love that sustained them through nearly 50 years of marriage. Young couples would visit their graves, hoping some of that legendary devotion would rub off on them. But for Finn and Marlowe, it had never been about being legendary. It had been about being present for each other, day after day, year after year. It had been about building a life together based on respect and partnership and deep, abiding love. It had been about taking the terrifying circumstances of their first real meeting and transforming it into the foundation of something beautiful and lasting. In the end, that ride to the mine had changed everything. It had turned a shy rancher and a lonely schoolteacher into partners, into parents, into the heart of a family and a community. It had proven that courage in the face of danger, love in the face of fear, could create something lasting and true. And that legacy lived on in their children, their grandchildren, and all the generations that followed, a testament to the power of love and the courage to fight for it, no matter the odds.